My name is Caleb, and on the day I entered Ironvale Academy, the crystal called me a failure before I even got through the front gate. The entrance plaza was packed with hundreds of new students, all standing under a floating stone sphere the size of a house. One by one, people touched the crystal and watched their starting rank appear in the air. C rank, B rank, A rank. Every time a high result appeared, the crowd exploded. Then Derek stepped forward. He was already famous before enrollment, because his lightning affinity had awakened at 13. He touched the crystal, and blue sparks crawled over the entire plaza. The sphere flashed A rank strength, A rank speed, S rank mana, and a rare combat talent called Storm Vein. People lost their minds. Derek gave the crowd a lazy smile like the applause was something he had ordered for breakfast. Then it was my turn. I placed one hand on the crystal. The giant sphere went silent. A number appeared. Strength, 3. Speed, 4. Mana, 2. Endurance, 3. Overall rank, F. For half a second, nobody reacted. Then the entire plaza laughed. I even heard somebody ask if the crystal had accidentally measured a houseplant. Derek looked at me once, then looked away. That hurt more than laughing. At least mocking someone means you think they are worth noticing. He had already decided I did not exist. The instructors did not look much better. Ironvale was the top combat academy on the continent. Most F ranks never made it past the outer testing hall. I only got admitted because I had scored perfectly on the written strategy exam and barely passed the practical section by tricking 3 training monsters into crashing into each other. That should have been embarrassing. Instead, I was staring at a second line on the crystal that nobody else could see. Growth rate, SSS. Training efficiency multiplier, x 300. I almost laughed. My stats were terrible. My talent was not. The crystal had basically told me I was the weakest person at the academy and then quietly handed me the ability to become a monster faster than everyone else. So while the crowd laughed, I started doing math. If one normal push-up gave a tiny amount of strength, mine gave 300 times that amount. If sword practice improved coordination, mine improved it 300 times faster. If getting punched improved pain tolerance, then technically being bullied was free training. That last thought became useful about 10 minutes later. The academy split us into testing groups and sent us into a combat hall. The first test was simple. Cross a room while magical pressure pushed against your body. The stronger you were, the farther you got. Derek walked through the whole thing with lightning snapping around his shoes. Tessa, a quiet girl with a talent for controlling metal threads, made it almost to the end by anchoring herself to the walls. Then I stepped in. I made it 12 feet. The pressure slammed me flat on my face. The room laughed again. I stood up. I took another step. Then another. Then the pressure launched me backward hard enough to bounce twice. People laughed even harder. I stood up again. An instructor told me I could stop. I asked if the rules said I had to. They did not. So I kept walking into the pressure. I got thrown back 32 times. On the 33rd attempt, I noticed something strange. The impact hurt less. My legs felt heavier, but stronger. I checked my stats. Strength, 9. Endurance, 11. I had tripled my physical ability in less than 20 minutes. That was the moment I understood how stupid this power could become. I stopped trying to pass the test normally. I started farming it. I would walk forward until the pressure threw me back, roll with the impact, sprint to the entrance, and do it again. The testing hall turned into my personal catapult. By attempt 50, I could reach the middle. By attempt 70, the laughing had stopped. By attempt 90, students were moving out of the way when I came flying backward because I had started landing on my feet. On attempt 100, I walked through the entire chamber. The pressure was still strong enough to make everyone else lean forward. I turned around and walked backward through it. The instructor stared at me. I asked if that counted as extra credit. He did not answer. That afternoon, we were shown our dorms and given 3 hours before the first training session. Most students unpacked. I went looking for stairs. Ironvale had a central tower with 412 steps from the ground floor to the upper training decks. I knew the number because I counted them while sprinting up and down until my legs felt like they were filled with molten metal. The first climb took 11 minutes. The 5th took 7. The 20th took 3. By the time the bell rang, I was skipping entire sections of staircase and using the railings to launch myself between floors. My speed had climbed from 4 to 28. I arrived at the training yard sweaty, smiling, and slightly concerned by how fun this was becoming. That was when Owen, our combat instructor, introduced himself. Owen did not look impressive. He wore a plain black training shirt and carried no weapon. Then he flicked one finger and split a stone target in half from 30 feet away. Everyone became very respectful very quickly. He told us Ironvale did not care about rank once training started. If we were weak, we would get stronger. If we were strong, we would be pushed until we discovered exactly how weak we still were. I liked him immediately. Our first lesson was basic striking. Most people practiced punches against padded posts. I asked Owen if I could use the reinforced post. He looked at my skinny arms, looked at the iron-banded column meant for upper-class students, and told me I was free to break my hand if I considered that educational, so I punched it. My wrist screamed. I checked my growth. Strength increased. Bone density increased. Impact resistance increased. Perfect. I punched it again, and again, and again. By the time everyone else finished 200 controlled strikes, I had hit the post until my knuckles were red and the iron bands had tiny dents. Derek noticed. He walked over, touched the dent with one finger, and asked what kind of trick I was using. I told him it was a secret technique called repeated violence. He did not laugh. That made it funnier. For the next week, I treated the academy like an amusement park built by a lunatic who wanted me to become stronger. I sprinted against wind tunnels until my shirt ripped. I practiced balance on rotating poles until I could run across them upside down using my hands. I carried stone weights up the tower, then carried bigger stone weights, then convinced the training staff to let me carry the cart that held the stone weights. During mana control class, I discovered my magic stat improved just as fast as everything else. The problem was that I started with almost no mana. The solution was obvious: use all of it, over and over. Most students practiced making a tiny light hover over their palm for 10 minutes. I created the light, threw it into a bucket, emptied my mana, waited 30 seconds, and did it again. At first the light was the size of a coin. By sunset it was the size of a melon. By midnight I accidentally lit half the dorm hallway bright enough to wake everyone. Someone threw a shoe at me. I caught it without looking. My reflex stat increased. I started hoping people would throw more shoes. After 7 days my stats had climbed so fast that the Academy Crystal refused to label me F rank anymore. It called me D rank. Everyone thought the first test had been wrong. I knew better. I was not suddenly talented. I was still the same guy who had walked in with the physical power of a sleepy goat. I had just compressed years of training into 1 week. Then Ironvale decided to test us against each other. The first ranking match happened in a circular arena surrounded by floating shields. Students were randomly paired and told to win by forcing the other person out of bounds or making them surrender. My opponent was not important enough to remember. What mattered was the expression on everyone's faces when the Academy announced my name. People expected the F-rank joke to continue. I walked into the arena and decided I wanted to give them a better show. The other student charged me with a wooden spear. 1 week earlier, I would have needed a plan. Now I could see the spear tip moving like it was underwater. I stepped sideways, tapped the shaft with 2 fingers, and used his own momentum to spin him around. I could have pushed him out. That would have been boring. So I ducked under the spear, grabbed the back of his shirt, ran 3 steps up the arena wall, and used the angle to swing him through the air like a human hammer throw. He flew over the boundary and landed safely in the shield barrier. The crowd went silent. I bowed. Then I realized bowing after throwing someone through the air made me look incredibly annoying. I decided to keep doing it. Round after round, the matches got harder. I beat a fire user by slapping his flames aside with a mana-coated training paddle. I beat a speed specialist by running in a circle until he chased me, then stopping so suddenly he launched himself into the wall. I beat a telekinetic student by throwing 12 wooden practice swords into the air at different angles. He tried controlling all of them at once. While he was busy, I walked over and pushed him outside the ring. That got me to the top 16. Then I drew Tessa. Tessa was different. She had watched my matches instead of laughing at them. Her metal thread talent let her control thin wires with terrifying precision. When our fight started, she filled the arena with nearly invisible lines. I took 1 step forward, and a thread sliced my sleeve. I stopped. She had turned the entire arena into a spiderweb. If I rushed, I would be wrapped up before I reached her, so I did something she did not expect. I sat down. The crowd started murmuring. Tessa tightened the field around me. I pulled a coin from my pocket. Then I flicked it. The coin hit 1 metal thread, bounced, hit another, changed direction, bounced again, and shot straight toward Tessa's face. She moved her head aside. That was all I needed. For 1 instant, every thread shifted with her reflex. I had been studying the web while pretending to sit there doing nothing. I moved through the gap. Not around it, through it. 1 foot on a thread, 1 hand on another. I launched myself between the lines so fast the audience only saw silver wires snapping behind me. Tessa tried closing the web. I twisted sideways, kicked 1 thread into another, and made half her trap tangle itself. Then I landed directly in front of her. She raised both hands. I held up the coin. It had somehow ended up back in my palm after ricocheting around the arena. I asked if she wanted to see me do it again. She stepped out of bounds on her own. Later, she told me that was the most irritating victory pose she had ever seen. I took it as a compliment. My next match was Derek. The entire academy packed the arena. Derek stood across from me with lightning crawling over his arms. He had not lost a single exchange since arriving. He did not need tricks. He was fast enough to blur and powerful enough to crack the arena floor with a casual strike. A week ago, I had been an F-rank nobody. Now I wanted to see how far I had actually climbed. The bell rang. Derek vanished. I barely blocked the first punch. Lightning exploded through my arms and sent me sliding backward. My hands went numb. He came again. I dodged left, too slow. His kick caught my shoulder and flipped me into the air. I landed, rolled, and smiled. Derek stared at me like I had gone insane. The truth was worse. Every hit was training me. My lightning resistance increased. My reaction speed increased. My mana control improved from trying to protect my nerves. Derek thought he was beating me down. He was speed-running my development. So I stopped avoiding the fight. I stepped closer. He punched me again. I blocked. This time I moved only 5 feet. He attacked again. I blocked again. 3 feet, again, 1 foot. The crowd slowly realized something was wrong. Derek realized it too. His expression changed. He increased the voltage. Blue lightning became white. The next hit blasted smoke across the arena. For a second, nobody could see me. Then the smoke cleared. I was still standing. My hair had become ridiculous, but I was standing. I told Derek he had finally fixed my hairstyle. That was the first time I saw him lose his temper. He pulled every spark into one hand and formed a spear of lightning. Owen immediately raised the arena shield strength. Derek threw it. I could have dodged. Instead, I did something much stupider. I punched it. The lightning spear exploded against my fist. For 1 second I thought I had made a serious mistake. Then my mana surged around my arm. I felt the energy spreading through me, and I remembered a lesson from class. Mana followed pathways. Electricity also followed pathways. So I stopped resisting. I redirected it. I twisted my hips, dragged the lightning through a layer of mana around my body, and slammed my palm into the floor. The entire attack discharged into the arena stone. Blue cracks flashed in every direction. Then I used the explosion under my feet as propulsion. I launched forward through my own smoke cloud, appeared in front of Derek, and tapped him on the forehead. He had 1 second to look confused. Then the stored force from my movement released. The air boomed. Derek flew backward, bounced off the shield, and landed outside the ring. I had beaten the Academy's favorite prodigy after 7 days. That should have made people respect me. Instead, it made everyone suspicious. Some thought I had hidden my power during enrollment. Others thought I had used an artifact. Owen solved the argument in the simplest way possible. He tested me himself. The next morning, he brought our class to the upper training platform, pointed at me, and said I had 60 seconds to land 1 clean hit on him. If I succeeded, everyone could stop calling my improvement fake. If I failed, I still got 60 seconds of training against an instructor who could split stone with a finger. I could not lose. The timer started. I rushed him. Owen flicked me into a wall. I rushed again. He tripped me without moving his feet. I tried attacking from above. He caught my ankle and threw me into a target dummy. I used the dummy as a springboard, kicked off its head, rotated in the air and attacked from behind. He elbowed me without looking. 30 seconds passed. I had learned one thing. Owen was not blocking my attacks. He was predicting them. So I needed to make an attack I did not plan. That sounded impossible until I remembered how I had trained reflexes by catching random objects. I grabbed a bucket of wooden practice balls from the side of the platform and kicked it into the air. Hundreds of balls rained down. Owen looked up for 1 fraction of a second. I closed my eyes. I stopped thinking. Instead of choosing a path, I reacted to the balls hitting my body. 1 bounced off my shoulder, so I moved right. 1 clipped my knee, so I dropped low. Another hit the ground beside me, and I kicked off it the instant it bounced. My movement became completely ridiculous because even I did not know where I was going. Owen could not predict a plan that did not exist. I flew through the falling balls, slid under his arm, spun, and tapped 2 fingers against his back. The timer showed 58 seconds. Owen looked over his shoulder. Then he smiled. The class exploded. Derek did not clap. Tessa did. After that, nobody called my growth fake again. They started calling it terrifying. I preferred that. But Ironvale had another problem waiting for me. At the end of the first month, every first-year student had to enter the Beast Hall. The Beast Hall was not a normal room. It was a giant underground wilderness built inside the academy, filled with magical creatures created from condensed mana. Students entered in groups and earned points by defeating stronger beasts. The creatures could hurt us, but the hall's safety barriers prevented death. Most teams planned for days. Derek formed a group around raw firepower. Tessa joined a balanced team that specialized in traps. I decided to go alone. Owen asked why. I told him groups would slow down my training. He rubbed his forehead like I was personally shortening his lifespan. Then he let me do it. The beast hall opened. Hundreds of students rushed into the underground forest. I walked in carrying a wooden staff, 6 training knives, a bag of chalk, and enough food for one afternoon. My plan was simple: find the strongest thing I could survive. Annoy it, repeat. Within 20 minutes, I found a horned ape the size of a carriage. It punched me through a tree. Excellent, I got up. It punched me through another tree. Even better. By the 6th tree, my endurance had increased enough that I stopped flying as far. By the 10th, I started blocking. By the 15th, the ape looked tired. I almost felt bad. Then it roared and threw a boulder at me. I caught the boulder. That surprised both of us. I looked at the rock in my hands. Then I looked at the ape. The ape looked at me. I threw it back. The impact knocked the creature into a pond and earned me more points than most first-year teams had collected all morning. That was when I realized the beast hall was full of training opportunities nobody had ever been stupid enough to use. I wrestled a 6-legged boar to improve grip strength. I chased razor-wing birds through the canopy to train aerial movement. I let a giant snake wrap around me, then practiced escaping until the snake started trying to avoid me. At one point, I found a colony of explosive beetles. I spent 20 minutes using them as stepping stones. Every beetle exploded the moment I touched it, launching me toward the next one. By the end, I was basically surfing through the forest on explosions. Students watching through the observation screen started gathering around my feed. I did not know that at the time. I only knew I was having the greatest day of my life. Then I found the central beast. The academy kept one monster deep inside the hall that first years were not expected to defeat. It was a giant black wolf with 4 eyes and a mane made of blue flame. The moment I saw it, I checked the point value. It was worth more than every other creature I had defeated combined. So naturally, I threw a rock at it. The wolf turned. Its 4 eyes locked onto me. I immediately understood that I had made a magnificent decision. It moved so fast I barely saw it. 1 second it was 50 feet away. The next, its paw hit my guard and launched me across a clearing. I crashed through a stone pillar. My arms went numb. I checked my stats. They jumped. I grinned. The wolf charged again. For the next 10 minutes, I got absolutely destroyed. I bounced off trees, rocks, walls, and once, somehow a different beast that had wandered into the wrong area and immediately ran away. But each hit made me tougher. Each dodge made me faster. Each failed counterattack improved my timing. Slowly, I stopped being prey. The wolf lunged. I ducked. Its claws missed my head by an inch. I hit its ribs with the staff. The staff snapped. The wolf barely reacted. I stared at the broken weapon. Then I smiled. I did not need the staff anymore. I threw both halves aside. The wolf opened its mouth and released a wave of blue fire. I had no fire resistance. That was about to change. I ran straight into it. The observation staff apparently started screaming. I coated my body in mana and used the same principle I had learned from Derek's lightning. Do not stop the energy. Give it somewhere to go. The flames wrapped around me. My coat burned away. My eyebrows survived, which felt like a victory. Then I pulled the mana outward, twisted my body and spun the flame into a vortex around my arms. I could not control the wolf's magic, but I could control the air and mana touching it. That was enough. I ran out of the fire carrying a rotating ring of blue flame around myself. The wolf actually stepped back. I think that was the first time a training beast had ever reconsidered its career. I charged. The wolf leaped. At the last second, I dropped low, slid under its body, punched the ground, and released the fire downward. The explosion launched me straight up. I drove both heels into the wolf's stomach from below. The giant creature went airborne. Then I grabbed its fur. We rose above the treetops together. At the peak of the jump, I twisted. The wolf was bigger than a horse. That did not stop me from spinning it over my head. Once, twice, 3 times. Then I threw it into the lake. The entire underground forest shook when it hit. The wolf climbed out, soaked and furious. I was already waiting on a boulder. It roared. I pointed at the lake. It charged. I jumped sideways. The wolf smashed the boulder. That was exactly what I wanted. The boulder had been covering a natural mana vent I noticed earlier because the grass around it leaned outward. The shattered rock released a blast of compressed magical air. The wolf got launched off the ground. I caught it by one front leg. Then I used the mana vent like a spinning platform. The pressure turned me in circles faster and faster while I held the wolf. By the time I let go, the creature became a black and blue meteor. It flew across the clearing and crashed into the safety barrier hard enough to trigger an automatic defeat. The beast hall announced my score. First place, by a lot. When I returned to the surface, every student in the observation room was staring at me. I was shirtless, covered in soot, holding half a broken wooden staff, and carrying a cooked fish I had accidentally blasted out of the lake. I took one bite. Nobody said anything. That was probably the moment my reputation changed from weak student with weird potential to academy problem. A month passed, then another. My growth never slowed. That was the truly unfair part. Most prodigies improved quickly at first, then hit walls. I did not hit walls. Walls became equipment. I trained punches by breaking stone blocks. When stone became easy, I punched iron plates. When iron became easy, I asked Owen what was harder. He pointed at a cliff behind the academy. I am pretty sure he was joking. I climbed it and punched the cliff. The cliff lost. My magic grew even more ridiculous. I learned that my talent did not give me a special element. Instead, my control improved so quickly that I could manipulate raw mana in simple shapes. Simple did not mean weak. I made mana platforms under my feet and ran through the air. I made transparent hands to catch falling objects. I made thin mana strings and used them to swing between towers. Tessa accused me of stealing her style. I told her mine were invisible, so technically nobody could prove it. She threw a metal coin at my head. I caught it with a mana hand from across the room. My control increased. Free training. Derek also changed. He stopped treating me like a joke and started training harder than anyone except me. That made him dangerous. By the third month, his lightning had evolved into something called Thunder Mantle. It covered his entire body and boosted his speed so much that he could cross an arena before most people blinked. He challenged me every few days. The first rematch lasted 2 minutes. The second lasted 5. The third destroyed 12 training dummies and 1 section of wall. The fourth was cancelled because Owen said if we broke another wall, he was making both of us rebuild it by hand. Derek immediately agreed. I almost accepted anyway because carrying bricks sounded like endurance training. Then Ironvale announced the first-year Grand Clash. This was the tournament everyone cared about. The winner got access to the Sky Vault, a restricted training chamber at the top of the academy, where gravity could be increased to absurd levels. The second I heard that, I forgot about the trophy. I wanted the gravity room. Students spent the next 2 weeks preparing secret techniques. I prepared by doing everything. I ran with weights tied to my ankles. I fought training constructs blindfolded. I practiced mana steps while carrying water bowls and refused to stop until I could sprint through the air without spilling a drop. I trained reaction speed by standing in the target range while automatic launchers fired padded arrows from random directions. Eventually, I got bored and turned the speed to maximum. Then I added a second launcher, then a third. By the end, I was cooking lunch while dodging arrows. That was when Felix noticed me. Felix was the Academy's strongest third-year student and current grand champion. He was not participating in our first-year tournament, but he had come to watch the training hall. He stood at the doorway while I flipped a pancake with one hand, blocked 3 arrows with a spoon, stepped over a 4th, and caught a 5th between my teeth. He asked Owen if first years were always like this. Owen told him no, just me. Felix walked over and took the spoon from my hand. Then he bent it into a spiral with 2 fingers. He said the Sky Vault would not make me stronger if gravity could not challenge me. I asked what could. Felix smiled. Then he punched me through the wall. I landed outside the training hall in a flower bed. I checked my stats. They increased. I stood up and yelled through the hole that he was my new favorite person. Felix laughed. That was our introduction. The Grand Clash started 3 days later. The Academy converted the central arena into a giant moving battlefield. Platforms rose and sank. Walls shifted. Mana cannons fired harmless but extremely painful blasts across random lanes. The first phase was a free-for-all race. 200 first years had to cross the battlefield and reach one of 30 safe zones. The moment the match began, everyone sprinted forward. I went backward. That confused people. Good. I had noticed something during the explanation. The moving platforms were controlled by pressure plates underneath the arena. Most students were trying to jump from platform to platform. I ran to the back wall, climbed it, and jumped onto the support structure above the entire battlefield. From there, I could see everything. I ran across the beams while everyone else struggled below. A mana cannon fired at me. I stepped onto the blast, not around it, on it. I formed a mana platform for half a second, let the cannon hit it, and used the explosion like a rocket booster. I shot across the arena, bounced off a hanging chain, swung over 3 collapsing platforms, and landed inside the first safe zone before half the students had crossed the starting area. The announcer was silent for several seconds. Then he asked if that route was legal. Owen apparently said the rule was reach the safe zone. So yes, I qualified first. Derek qualified second by simply blasting through every obstacle in a straight line. Tessa qualified 5th after turning broken metal from the arena into a moving bridge. The next phase was one-on-one combat. This time, everyone knew what I could do. That made the fights better. My first opponent filled the arena with ice spikes. I used mana steps to run over them, jumped off the tallest spike, and dropped from the ceiling like a meteor. My second opponent created sound waves strong enough to knock people over. I noticed each attack compressed the dust on the floor before it hit me, so I watched the dust instead of him. I dodged every blast before it arrived, closed the distance, and flicked his forehead hard enough to send him rolling out of bounds. My third opponent used gravity magic. That one made me happy. He increased gravity around my body until the floor cracked under my feet. Everyone expected me to collapse. Instead, I started doing squats. He stared at me. I asked him to increase it. He did. I kept doing squats. My strength and endurance climbed so fast I could feel the change happening. He doubled the pressure. I did lunges. He doubled it again. I did push-ups. At that point, he looked personally offended. He pushed the spell to maximum. I stood up. Then I jumped. The gravity field was still active. I jumped anyway. The arena floor exploded under my feet. I rose 10 feet, landed behind him, and gently pushed him out of bounds. I thanked him for the workout. The audience started chanting my name. 3 months earlier, they had laughed when the crystal called me F-Rank. Now they were waiting to see what stupid thing I would do next. I did not disappoint them. In the quarterfinal, Tessa trapped me inside a moving cage of metal threads. This time she had learned from our first fight. The wires shifted independently, leaving no stable gaps. I could not run through them. So I made my own path. I formed hundreds of tiny mana beads and attached one to every thread around me. Tessa felt the interference and tried pulling back. Too late. I snapped my fingers. Every bead expanded at once. The mana pushed the threads outward and turned her cage into a giant metal flower. Before she could rebuild it, I stepped onto one of the stretched wires, ran along it like a tight rope, and used the tension to launch myself across the arena. Tessa crossed her arms in front of her. I stopped 1 inch from her face. Instead of hitting her, I flicked the same kind of coin I had used in our first match. It bounced off the floor behind her and crossed the boundary line. She looked down at it. I told her the coin had escaped, so she should probably go catch it. She laughed, then she stepped out of bounds. That put me in the semi-final. My opponent was Derek, again. But this time he did not look angry. He looked excited. That was much more dangerous. When the bell rang, Thunder Mantle exploded around him. He vanished. I crossed my arms just before his kick hit. The impact lifted me off the ground. Before I landed, he appeared above me. I created a mana platform in the air and kicked off it sideways. His fist missed by inches. I formed another platform behind him and jumped off that one. For the first time, we fought without touching the ground. He ran through the air using bursts of lightning. I ran through the air using mana steps. The crowd below kept turning their heads back and forth because we were moving too fast to follow. Derek fired a lightning spear. I caught it between 2 mana plates and redirected it into a floating platform. The explosion shattered the platform. I used the debris as stepping stones. He attacked from the right. I ducked. He turned into lightning and curved behind me. I had been waiting for that. I slammed both hands together. A sphere of raw mana expanded around me. Derek entered it at full speed. The mana was not a shield. It was glue. I changed the density around his body for half a second. His speed dropped. That half second was enough. I grabbed his wrist. We were both 30 feet above the arena. Derek looked at me. I smiled. Then I spun. He realized what I was doing too late. I used his own lightning momentum and my rotation to sling him downward. He fired a blast at the ground to stop himself. I expected that. The blast pushed him upward again, right toward me. I formed a mana platform above his head. He hit it. The rebound sent him back down. For the next 5 seconds, Derek became the Academy's first human pinball. He blasted downward, bounced up, hit a platform, bounced down, blasted sideways, hit another platform, and ricocheted across the arena while I kept placing mana plates in exactly the worst possible positions. By the final bounce, even Derek was laughing. I released the last platform at an angle. He flew out of bounds and landed standing. The crowd erupted. Derek looked up at me from outside the arena. Then he gave me a thumbs up. That mattered more than I expected. The guy who had ignored me on the first day now looked at me like a real rival. I had 1 match left. The final should have been simple. It was not. Before the last match could begin, the Academy alarm sounded. A deep bell shook every tower. The arena barriers flickered. Students looked around in confusion. Owen's expression changed immediately. Then part of the mountain behind Ironvale exploded. A giant creature pulled itself from a sealed cavern beneath the Academy grounds. It was not part of the tournament. It was not a training beast. It was real. The thing looked like a centipede made of volcanic glass, long enough to wrap around the central tower twice. Orange heat glowed between the plates of its body. Every leg ended in a blade. Its mouth opened vertically and released a roar that shattered windows across the arena. The Academy shields activated. Teachers moved first. Owen launched himself toward the creature with several senior instructors. Felix followed. Students were ordered to evacuate underground. I started moving with everyone else. Then I saw the creature slam its body through one of the outer shield towers. The barrier around the evacuation path weakened. Fragments of burning stone rained toward the first years. I did not think. I moved. Mana platforms appeared under my feet. I sprinted upward through open air, caught the first falling rock with both hands, spun, and threw it into the second. They exploded into smaller pieces. I made a wide mana plate above the crowd. Stone hammered against it. The plate cracked. My mana dropped fast, so I changed the shape. Instead of one big shield, I created dozens of angled panels. Every falling rock hit a panel and slid sideways away from the evacuation line. Tessa saw what I was doing. She pulled metal from the damaged arena and formed support beams under my mana plates. Derek blasted incoming debris apart before it reached us. For about 10 seconds, the three of us turned the sky into a construction project happening at the speed of panic. Then Owen shouted for us to move. The creature's head had turned toward the arena. It opened its mouth. Heat gathered inside. I had seen that kind of charge before. The blue wolf in the beast hall had done something similar. This was just several thousand times worse. The creature fired. A beam of molten energy crossed the academy grounds. Felix hit it from the side with a shockwave punch. The beam bent. It missed the crowd, but it hit the central tower. The tower shook. The sky vault was at the top. I watched the upper section begin to fall. Then I had a very stupid idea. I looked at Derek. He already knew. He told me absolutely not. I said I had not even explained it yet. He told me my face had explained enough. I grabbed his shoulder. I asked how much lightning he could put into one launch. He stared at the falling tower, then at me. Then he smiled. That was all the answer I needed. Tessa wrapped metal threads around my waist and anchored them to the arena. Derek placed both hands against my back. I created a mana platform under my feet. The falling sky vault was hundreds of feet above us. Derek released everything. Lightning exploded. I launched upward like a bullet. The metal threads behind me unspooled, keeping me connected to the ground. I formed one mana step, then another, each one angled to add more speed. The tower section fell faster. I climbed faster. At the last second I reached it. I put both hands against a building, a whole building, and tried to stop it. My arms bent, my shoulders screamed. The weight drove me downward. My stats jumped. Strength increased. Endurance increased. Mana output increased. Not enough. I was still falling, so I stopped thinking of it as catching a building. That was impossible. I only needed to change where it landed. I formed a curved mana surface beneath the tower, then another. Instead of stopping the fall, I turned it. The entire upper section of Ironvale began sliding through the sky like the world's largest stone sled. Tessa pulled the anchor threads sideways. Derek fired lightning into them, magnetizing the metal enough to increase the pull. Together, we redirected the falling sky vault over the arena. It crashed into an empty training field beyond the academy walls. The impact sent a dust cloud hundreds of feet high. I dropped out of the sky. Derek caught me with a lightning burst that slowed my fall. Tessa's threads wrapped around my ankle and yanked me the rest of the way down. I hit the ground face first. It was not my coolest landing. I decided nobody would remember that part. The centipede creature was still attacking. Owen and the senior instructors had damaged several of its legs, but every strike against its glass body released waves of heat. Felix landed beside us, bleeding from one eyebrow and smiling like the fight had finally become interesting. He told us to evacuate. I asked if he could beat it. He said eventually. I looked at the damaged shield tower, then at the creature, then at the tournament arena. The arena still had working gravity engines under the floor. An idea formed. It was terrible. Perfect. I told Felix I needed 30 seconds. He asked for what? I said to make gravity angry. Felix did not understand, but Owen did. He looked at the arena, looked at me, and told everyone to clear the center. Tessa and Derek stayed. Of course they did. I ran to the control platform and slammed both hands into the mana channels under the arena. The gravity engines were designed to create localized fields for training matches. Normally, they were limited for safety. The outer control crystals had cracked during the attack. I was not trying to bypass anything or play with controls. I was doing something simpler. I fed the engines raw mana directly. My mana control had become precise enough to feel the pathways inside the machine. I forced every working gravity node to focus on one location above the arena. A black ripple appeared in the air. Pebbles lifted from the ground. Then they shot upward. The gravity field was inverted. Derek stared at it. I told him to get the centipede over here. He asked how. I pointed at myself. Then I ran toward the monster. The creature saw me immediately, probably because I was sprinting at it while waving both arms like an idiot. It slammed one bladed leg down. I jumped onto the leg. Then I ran up its body. The glass plates burned under my shoes. I created mana steps inches above the surface and sprinted along its back while the creature twisted beneath me. Every movement became training. Heat resistance, balance, reaction speed, mana control. I reached its head. The creature opened its mouth. I jumped inside. For 1 second, the world became orange fire. I coated myself in every layer of mana I could form and ran along the inside of its mouth. The heat was insane. My shield cracked. My eyebrows finally gave up. I kicked one of its inner fangs, changed direction, and launched myself back out just before the jaws closed. The monster went berserk. Good. Now it hated me personally. I ran toward the arena. It followed. Derek blasted its eyes from the side whenever it slowed down. Tessa pulled broken metal beams under its legs, making it stumble forward. Felix and Owen attacked from behind, forcing it to keep moving. We drove the giant creature directly over the arena. I reached the gravity zone first. The instant I entered, I launched upward. The centipede stepped into it. Its entire front half lifted off the ground. The creature thrashed. The gravity engines screamed. Cracks spread through the arena floor. I needed more power, so I did what I always did. I trained in the middle of the problem. I poured mana into the engines until my reserves emptied. Then I forced them to recover faster. I emptied them again, recovered, emptied, recovered. Every cycle increased my mana capacity. The gravity field grew stronger. The centipede rose higher, first 10 feet, then 30, then 50. Students watching from the evacuation tunnels could see the giant monster floating above the academy like a horrifying parade balloon. I was not done. I looked at Derek. He already looked tired of my ideas. I pointed upward. He understood anyway. Derek fired lightning into a metal beam Tessa had wrapped around the creature. The beam became a glowing conductor. Tessa twisted the threads. The creature started spinning, slowly at first, then faster. The gravity field lifted it higher while the metal lines turned it like a giant drill bit. Felix realized what we were doing. He jumped. Not a normal jump. The ground cratered under him. He shot hundreds of feet into the air, past the spinning monster, and reached the highest point above it. Then he turned downward. His fist pulled back. I had seen Felix punch me through a wall with almost no effort. This time, he was not holding back. He dropped like a meteor. His fist hit the center of the creature's back. The shock wave split clouds. The centipede slammed downward. At the same moment, I reversed the gravity field. Up became down. The monster accelerated. It hit the arena. The entire battlefield collapsed into a crater. Glass plates exploded outward. Heat blasted through the academy. For several seconds, nobody could see anything through the dust. Then the creature moved. One leg twitched. I groaned. Felix laughed. Owen told him this was not funny. Then the creature started pulling itself out. Its outer plates were cracked, but not destroyed. I noticed orange light leaking through the fractures. The body was strongest outside. Inside, it was unstable. I looked down at the shattered arena. The tournament mana cannons were buried in the rubble. One still had power. I could feel it. I ran. Owen shouted something behind me. I did not hear it. I jumped into the crater, slid under a swinging blade leg, and reached the half-buried cannon. The barrel was bent. That was fine. I did not need it to shoot straight. I ripped the cannon free. 3 months earlier, I could barely lift a training weight. Now I carried a weapon the size of a wagon on one shoulder. The creature opened its mouth. I ran toward it. Felix shouted that I was going the wrong way. I told him I knew. The monster fired another heat beam. I threw the cannon. Not at the monster, into the beam. The cannon absorbed the blast for 1 second before exploding. That explosion was exactly what I wanted. I had filled the damaged cannon with my own mana before throwing it. The two energies collided. The blast turned sideways and spread into a massive ring. For 1 instant, the creature's mouth was forced open wider. I created a chain of mana platforms directly into it. Then I sprinted. Derek yelled my name. Tessa called me an idiot. Owen probably developed several new gray hairs. I ran straight into the monster's mouth again. This time I did not come back out. I went deeper. The inside of the creature was a tunnel of black crystal and orange fire. Every movement nearly crushed me. I jumped between shifting plates, used mana shields as wedges, and followed the brightest glow. At the center of its body, I found a core the size of a person. It pulsed like a miniature sun. I could have punched it, too obvious. I could have blasted it, too risky. So I hugged it, Not because I was being friendly. I wrapped both arms around the core and used the stupidest training method I had discovered since entering Ironvale. Mana cycling. The core released energy. I absorbed a tiny amount through my mana layer, redirected it around my body, and released it back out. Again. The energy was far stronger than mine. Each cycle hurt. Each cycle also improved my control. The core started vibrating. Outside, the creature stopped moving. I kept cycling, faster. My mana pathways felt like they were on fire. My control jumped. My capacity jumped. My resistance jumped. I realized something. The creature was not creating endless heat. It was circulating the same energy through its body. So I changed the direction. I reversed the flow. The core pulled energy inward. The orange light between the creature's plates faded. Its legs went still. I pulled harder. Every remaining spark rushed toward the center. The core became brighter and brighter. That was the dangerous part. I had turned the monster into a bomb. I needed somewhere for the energy to go. Then I remembered the mana steps. Simple shapes. Simple did not mean small. I placed both palms on the core and created one long mana channel through the creature's body, out through its mouth, and straight into the sky. Then I released everything. A pillar of orange light erupted from the monster's mouth and shot into the clouds. The night turned bright as noon. The beam lasted 5 seconds. Then the core went dark. The giant creature collapsed. I crawled out of its mouth covered in soot and missing both eyebrows. The entire academy was silent. I raised one hand. Then I asked if the tournament final was still happening. That broke everyone. Students started laughing, cheering, screaming, and calling my name. Owen walked over and hit me on the head. Not hard. Probably because he knew it would count as training. The academy spent the rest of the day repairing the grounds and checking the sealed cavern. The creature had been dormant under the mountain for centuries. The earlier explosion had opened part of its chamber, and the tournament vibrations had apparently disturbed it. Nobody blamed me, for once. The Grand Clash final was postponed until the next morning. I slept for 14 hours. When I woke up, my body felt different. Not just stronger. Balanced. The constant fighting, training, mana cycling, gravity pressure, heat, lightning, and impossible movement had pushed every stat upward together. I checked my rank. The Academy Crystal displayed S rank overall. 3 months. F rank to S rank in 3 months. But the growth line still showed SSS. I was nowhere near finished. The final match took place in a temporary arena because I had helped destroy the normal one. My opponent was a powerful first year who had reached the final from the other side of the bracket. The crowd expected another giant fight. I walked into the ring. The bell rang. My opponent raised his weapon. I vanished. 1 second later, I was standing behind him. The wind from my movement reached the arena after I did. It pushed him gently over the boundary line. The match lasted less than 2 seconds. I won the Grand Clash. Nobody laughed at my rank anymore. Derek walked into the arena and tossed me the tournament medal before the officials could even bring it over. Tessa told me the final was disappointing. I told her I was tired. Owen told me that was the first intelligent thing I had said all semester. Felix leaned against the broken wall nearby and asked what I planned to do with access to the Sky Vault now that the Sky Vault was sitting sideways in a field. I looked at the fallen tower section. Then I smiled. A damaged gravity chamber sounded more interesting anyway. The Academy repaired enough of it to function 1 week later. I entered alone. The chamber was a circular room filled with gravity cores embedded in the walls. A control stone showed the standard levels. Level 1 doubled body weight. Level 2 tripled it. Level 5 was considered advanced. Level 10 was restricted to senior students. I started at 10. My knees bent. Then I stood straight. I increased it. 20. My shoes cracked the floor. 30. My breathing became heavy. 40. My bones hurt. Excellent. I started walking. Each step increased my strength. Each breath increased my endurance. Each attempt to circulate mana under pressure increased my control. I reached 50 times gravity, then 60. The chamber shook. I lay down and started doing push-ups. At 70, I did handstand push-ups. At 80, I used one hand. At 90, I got bored and started juggling pieces of broken stone with mana. At 100 times gravity, the control stone flashed a warning and stopped increasing. I stared at it. The room had finally reached its limit before I reached mine. I laughed so hard I lost balance and smashed face first into the floor. When I came out, Derek was waiting. He had heard the gravity cores screaming from 2 floors below. I asked him if he wanted to train. He said only if I promised not to turn him into a human pinball again. I promised nothing. That evening, the 5 of us stood on the academy roof. Me, Derek, Tessa, Owen, and Felix. The mountain was scarred from the giant creature's attack. The arena was half rebuilt. The fallen sky vault still leaned in the distance like someone had dropped a castle from the sky and forgotten to pick it up. 3 months earlier, I had stood in the entrance plaza while everyone laughed at my F-rank stats. Now first years stopped training when I walked past because they wanted to see what I was doing. Upper-class students challenged me because beating me had become a badge of honor. Instructors started quietly removing fragile objects from rooms before I entered. I had gone from the academy joke to one of its strongest students. But I did not feel like I had reached the top, not even close. Felix pointed toward the distant horizon. Far beyond Ironvale, past the forest and the Black Ridge, a thin beam of red light had appeared in the sky. Owen's expression became serious. He said it came from the Hollow Spire, an ancient training ruin that opened only once every several years. The academy had planned to send advanced students there at the end of the term. Felix was already smiling. Derek's lightning sparked across his fingers. Tessa pulled a coin from her pocket and flicked it at me. I caught it without looking. Then I stared at that red beam in the distance. A place built for advanced students. Unknown monsters, strange gravity, ancient combat chambers, probably several terrible decisions waiting to happen. My stats were already high enough to scare people. My growth rate was still SSS, and the best part was that I was still improving. I closed my hand around the coin and smiled. 3 months ago, I needed 100 tries just to walk across a pressure room. Now I was wondering how many tries it would take to punch through a mountain. There was only one way to find out.